for Europe. How can the EU secure the energy it needs? In the interview, the EU Energy Commissioner, Günther Oettinger.
Mr. Oettinger, you've been in Brussels for a good year now. Do you miss Stuttgart, where you used to be state premier of Baden-Württemberg?
No, my home's still in Stuttgart. I have family and friends there. And there are regular events in Baden-Württemberg where I represent the EU. Brussels is exciting, and I can help promote industry in Baden-Württemberg from there, especially the energy industry. I'm enjoying my new responsibilities, but I still have lots of contact with home.
Looking back at your first year as EU Energy Commissioner, what was your biggest success?
It's too early to say. We're still in the midst of making energy policy more European. Energy was one of the main themes when the European Community was founded. There was the European Coal and Steel Community, the Euratom Treaty. Then energy disappeared off Europe's agenda. But now, with the Lisbon Treaty and the imperatives of the energy markets and climate protection, we're Europeanizing energy policy. We have the complete support of the heads of state and government when it comes to energy efficiency, and I'm sure we're working on that more successfully than we'd be able to without their support.
Why then is there still no common energy policy if Europe's been working on this for more than 5 decades? Why have we gotten stuck?
For many years, energy was a national or regional issue. The process only began with the establishment of the internal gas and electricity markets 12 years ago. And then it became obvious that you can't protect the climate on a national level. Europe has to present a united front against China and the U.S. and fight for common goals. So what's been developed over the past 10 years is now becoming concrete, and only now, with the Lisbon Treaty, which is a year old, do we have the authority to draw up European energy laws.
The European Union had a plan to increase energy efficiency by 20% by the year 2020. That was a voluntary commitment, but recently it announced it wouldn't meet the targets after all. Why not?
We won't be able to meet it if we continue at the same pace. The past 3 years weren't especially successful. But with the clear backing of the European Council for meeting the 20% target, we've now got a new momentum. We have 3 major goals: reducing CO2 emissions by 20%, to get at least 20% renewables into the energy mix, and to increase energy efficiency. We're well on the way with 2 of these goals, and with the third, we now have to find the way to go. The European Council is the basis for that.
Staying with traditional energy sources that have been used for decades, Europe is becoming increasingly dependent on gas deliveries from Russia. How can you change that? How can you reduce this dependence?
We're dependent on the gas being delivered and rely on our partnership with Russia and also on diversification. That means the Russians are our partners, but Norway, Algeria, Libya, Qatar, and the Caspian area are becoming increasingly important partners. And we're also relying on integrating our European gas markets. And we're also asking member states to store gas supplies for 30 days. And with all these measures, I don't think we'll become dependent when it comes to gas. And certainly not in a position where we could be blackmailed. The main thing is to have meaningful partnerships which serve the interests of both sides. The Russians want to sell us gas and to buy European industrial expertise with the money, innovation, plans for developing Russian industry. So I think that our dependency on the gas supply is manageable.
Dependency, partners, supplier countries. Currently, there's unrest throughout North Africa with a popular uprising in Egypt. Could that jeopardize supply security in Europe?
Egypt alone isn't significant in that respect.
But as a transit country?
The Middle East, supply lines, transport routes, the North African region, they're all important. That's why we must turn our energy relations into a real partnership.
Europe depends on energy imports. How far can or should Europe's foreign policy go to secure those imports?
We need a common plan for our foreign energy policy, with common aims and a joint presence in the countries concerned, in the Caspian Sea region, in Russia, in the OPEC countries, in the Middle East, and in Africa. But the same is true of energy research, and for joint projects with China or the U.S., for example. And the European Council has paved the way for that, in that the member states or their leaders have shown a willingness to set common goals for energy-related foreign policy and allow the Commission to represent their interests abroad.
Zielfestlegung vorzunehmen und dann die Kommission zu beauftragen, die Interessen vor Ort zu vertreten.
To stay with foreign policy for a moment, you recently used rather emphatic language to warn about dangers China could pose for Europe. To quote you, Europe is selling its soul. What did you mean by that?
I was talking about government bonds. That is, the issue of how Europe finances itself. With national budgets in a state of crisis, we must do everything we can to escape the debt trap and make sure that our bonds do not increasingly end up being owned by countries like China. Otherwise, we will be dependent on the goodwill of that country, and that can't be in our political interest or foster a relationship between equal partners.
Here in Brussels, they say that sooner or later everything gets bogged down in bureaucracy. They call it Brusselization. Have you become Brusselized?
No, but I have been Europeanized. My place of work is Brussels, but I spend a lot of time working in other capitals, like Berlin, or regional capitals, like Munich, Düsseldorf, or Stuttgart. I keep my ear to the ground in places where people work or socialize. So I don't want to be a part of a spaceship Brussels. I want my work to be connected to the needs and perceptions of the people.
As a German politician who's moved on to a position in Europe, I'd like to ask you one last question. Recently, there's been an undercurrent of criticism concerning the way the German government has managed the euro crisis politically. Do you understand that criticism? Do you share it?
There are two opposing sets of interests at work here. The Chancellor took an oath to protect the interests of Germany, its taxpayers, its budget, its industry, and jobs in Germany. In Brussels, the aim is to help the weaker countries, and we have to find a way to live with these opposing interests, which concern Germany and Greece, or the Commission and member states. But I believe we will find a way, and the European Council has just come up with some good ideas for economic governance and for a sustainable, stable euro. I'm sure that we will approve the necessary agreements next month in a spirit of understanding and unity.
EU Energy Commissioner Günther Oettinger, thank you for speaking to DWTV.
You're welcome.
Einen guten Tag.